Welcome, wrestling fans. Welcome to Curtain Jerkin. As always, I'm your host, Jacob Grondy, reporting for the Main Event Marks YouTube channel and the Dragon Suplex Podcasting Network. What a week it's been in pro wrestling. What a week it's been in my life. I know you guys hopefully listened to the last mini-sode of the podcast where I did tell you guys that I was going to run the Richmond Marathon. I did run the Richmond Marathon. Richmond, a great city. Went to the art museum. Tried so much of the good local food there. There's a coffee and oysters restaurant there, and coffee is one of my favorite things, as you guys probably know. And oysters, another one of my favorite things. So just an exclusive coffee and oysters place. Had to check out. It was good. Went to Hops Pizza. That was good. Went to Nate's Bagels. That was a good place. Shout out to all the great places in Richmond, Virginia to eat. Ran the marathon 3:25. Finished like 247th, I think, out of 1,700 people. Not bad. Third best marathon ever for me. My best is 3:20. My second best is 3:22, and now I ran a 3:25. Fourth best, 3:27. Fifth best, 3:35. Where was I? Sixth best, 4:18. And then seventh best, my first one was 4:40. So I've gotten better over the years, but I've gotten kind of stagnant. But we're not talking about my marathons. We are talking about wrestling. And we're going to be talking about Bobby Fish. I thought this was pretty interesting. He won his first ever boxing fight, or kickboxing, something like that. I think it was boxing. It was the undercard of a Mayweather fight. Sammy Guevara was on commentary, believe it or not. But he fucking won. So he now officially has a better combat sports record than CM Punk, someone that he was outspoken about disliking before he joined Impact Wrestling. And then during Impact Wrestling, people are kind of hazing him by chanting CM Punk during his pro wrestling matches. But here he is, kind of proving himself right here, as he was better than CM Punk. And if shit came to shove, he could fuck CM Punk up. And I guess the proof is in the pudding here. He did win his first boxing fight. But I do think I'm burying the lead a little bit here, because it's come out that Stone Cold Steve Austin, who came out of retirement last year at WrestleMania, is training. And people are assuming he is training to get back into the ring again. I mean, WWE would be dumb to not take advantage of this. If he wants to do one match a year for the next 3 or 4 years, and that's the cherry on top of his amazing career, why not? I mean, CM Punk and him always had like maybe an interest in wrestling each other, and maybe CM Punk might be out of his contract to wrestle Stone Cold Steve Austin. I think I'm fantasy booking a little bit here, but I think I'm playing along with a fantasy a lot of people have. Some people are saying John Cena, which would be crazy. John Cena versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. Maybe Stone Cold Steve Austin has a rematch with Kevin Owens or something. There's a lot of talk about The Rock being in this year's WrestleMania to go up against Roman Reigns. But there's also a lot of talk about the DC powers that be not wanting their Black Adam character to look weak with Roman Reigns beating him. Of course, we're all rolling our eyes. Don't DC people know that wrestling is fake, is what we're kind of saying here, but I guess they're saying there's a lot of children. I guess they're saying there's a lot of, people that would maybe, it just would look bad for them just to see him lay down for a 3 count in any realm, any kind of universe. I learned that through Billy Body on the Keep It 100 podcast. But regardless, Stone Cold coming back, or, The Rock coming back, this year's WrestleMania is shaping up to be very interesting. You also have, Cody Rhodes returning before too long. CM Punk is out of AEW. I don't know if, or it looks like he's out of AEW. Who knows what's going on with that? I mean, with the Stone Cold rumors, kind of came along with John Cena coming back. So this year's WrestleMania looks like it's going to shape up to be pretty big. And WWE, firing at all cylinders. Raw last night was pretty good. Seth Rollins looks wild as hair with this new haircut. Lashley coming out at the beginning to interrupt Rollins. And I feel like his loss, Bobby Lashley's loss at Crown Jewel, is the only thing we're supposed to really take away from that show. It's the only thing that really gets brought up in that show, about that show, week to week now. Ali coming out, getting thrown around by Bobby Lashley isn't really how I would use him if I was booking the show, but I enjoy seeing it when I do watch the show, and it's putting him over, I guess, in a way, as someone who's got a lot of heart, kind of. So I'll just take it. It's better than having him not on the show at all. I love Mustafa Ali since the 205 Live days, since the Cruiserweight Classic days. And then you have, Theory cutting a good promo after, the wrestling world kind of writ him off as being buried by Triple H. Ziggler interrupts him. He has a match where he kind of just destroys Ziggler and then attacks Rollins after that. So, we kind of chalked him up as being buried, as being Vince's guy who's getting pushed aside now that Hunter's back and everything, or Hunter's in charge. But you can't write him off here. He had a good showing on Raw. And, I think that Hunter, like the rest of us, thought he was getting pushed down our throats a little bit. So you pull him back. You put him in the U.S. title feud, which is good because, that's a nice mid-card title for now. And it's also a good time to be fighting for the U.S. title because it's the biggest title on Raw because Roman is kind of taking up all the world titles, with the thing he's got going on. So this is good. Riddle and Gable was also good, as, you would have probably assumed. JBL and Corbin having a poker game in the back. I really like this. Some jabroni gets his money taken from them. They don't want to drink the Kentucky Bourbon in Kentucky. And then Tozawa steps up. They say, do you know how to play poker? He says no. And they, kind of cackle to themselves, arrogantly letting him play, and then get their money stolen from him by Tozawa. And that sets up a match between Corbin and Tozawa. All of a sudden, I care about a match between Baron Corbin and Akira Tozawa. Then it hits me. Raw gets a lot of shit, but it's leagues better than the other wrestling show on Monday nights, AEW Dark, because they're telling stories here. AEW Dark is like 2 hours and 10 matches on YouTube. YouTube has a broader reach than TBS and TNT, where Dynamite and Rampage are on, obviously. If they cut those matches in half, show a little bit of, highlights from Dynamite and Rampage, and maybe take a few more matches out to set up some of these matches in storyline, I think that they have a good chance of getting me to switch from Raw to AEW Dark. But since it's just match after match, squash match after squash match, a kind of a format that hasn't really been popular since like 1994 or something, since the debut of Monday Night Raw, when they started having marquee matches on television. WCW followed suit around 1995 with Monday Night Nitro, but for some reason, when we go on YouTube, as far as AEW is concerned, we go back to that format for no reason, because the only reason you would do that is to get people's overall rankings to a point where you can justify them getting title shots. But whenever they feel like it, they will just give people title shots who don't have good rankings. So I think, WWE Raw gets a lot of shit, but who's kidding who here? It's a big reason why we're all wrestling fans, and it is the best wrestling show on Monday nights for sure. Something that wasn't on Monday night but was on Saturday night that was pretty entertaining was UFC 281. Zhang Weili, I hope I'm saying that right, Weili. I definitely am not saying that right, but pretty soon we're all going to learn her name, because she fought the then champion Carla Esperanza and choked her out in the second round. Madison Square Garden going crazy. She was in tears. Her interpreter, said that this was a dream for her to fight. Really cool story, but not the best story of the night. The best story of the night was the biggest match of the night, the main event, Israel Adesanya and Alex Pereira. Israel, one of the biggest stars and the best fighters in UFC. Alex Pereira has a win over him in Glory Kickboxing. So this is a little bit like AJ Styles and Nakamura from WrestleMania 33. The setup began at another company a few years before the big fight and the big fight feel And god damn it, if Alex Pereira didn't knock Izzy out again. I love Izzy. He dressed up like The Undertaker that one time, so he's one of us. He's a wrestling fan. So now, if you like Izzy like me and you're a fan, you want to see the story of him overcoming adversity here, beating the guy who's got his number, one of the best guys in the world, but this one guy knows how to take him down. Let's see if he can beat him. Sign me up. If you're a wrestling fan and you are not watching UFC, let me know why in the comments. Let me know on Twitter, because sometimes, most of the times, these UFC storylines, I guess not storylines, these UFC stories that you can kind of tell logically, that they put together, in video packages that are done a lot better than sometimes these wrestling stories, are great. A lot better than the stories that they've been telling in the NWA lately. A lot of people are talking about Nick Aldis splitting from the NWA. I talked about that last episode, so tune into that. Go in the archives and find that. I definitely was shocked, surprised, and not happy to hear that news. But I haven't talked about the main event of Hardtimes 3, the event that they held this Saturday at the same time as UFC. I wanted to watch this main event for myself just to see, just to give it a fair shot, because I heard a lot of bad things about it. As I was resting for my marathon. I went to bed at like 9 o'clock that night, but I couldn't sleep. I woke up at 4 a.m., checked Twitter, and everyone is shitting on the outcome of this match. I virtually have not read any good things about this match. So I was like, okay, I got to watch it just to give it a fair shot. I'm not just going to blindly shit on it. I want to talk about it. And I tune in to the show. First thing I notice is it's a small crowd. A city that's held WrestleManias, a city that's held big stadium shows before WrestleMania, while the NWA title was on the line in the Superdome. It was cool to see Bobby Fulton. Always cool to see Mae Valentine. And then we go right into the main event. Matt Cardona versus NWA champion Trevor Murdoch versus Tyrus, with G's in his corner. Second rope Bulldog, looking sloppy as hell, delivered by Trevor Murdoch, who usually doesn't deliver a sloppy second rope Bulldog, to Tyrus. 1-2. Tyrus kicks out. Tyrus in control. Chelsea Green comes out, distracts Cardona with the low blow. Rough Rider looks sloppy. Of course, the Rough Rider usually doesn't look sloppy. Looks like an easy move to take or whatever. So Tyrus kind of made both guys' staple moves look like shit here. It was a very short match for the NWA title. Tyrus locks in the Vulcan Death Grip. I like this move, paying homage to Ming. This is very cool. Of course, also utilizing Tyrus's lack of mobility, but continuing on with the storyline. The Vulcan Death, or the Tongue and Death Grip. I'm a fan of him, utilizing that move. Cardona and Murdoch teaming up with a double suplex to Tyrus. That was kind of cool. Cardona hits a DDT to Murdoch on the floor. No love lost between those two guys. Back in the ring, Tongue and Death Grip slam. 1-2. Tyrus is the new NWA World Champion. This was a very controversial outcome on social media, because Tyrus is a bad wrestler. And the only reason they were kind of putting the title on him is because they were going to get a little bit of news based on Tyrus's Fox News fame. He's a conservative, author. He has a #1 bestseller in the New York Times book. I don't really know what the book's about. I just know he's famous for being on Fox News. Kind of a thing. I don't watch cable much. I just watch wrestling, really. But coming at this from a wrestling fan's perspective, I'm never a fan of them putting titles on guys, because people that don't watch wrestling anyways will tune in. Logan Paul, Bad Bunny, those guys go out there and they look like they're one. I will say they are better wrestlers than Tyrus. And so then, if you bring more eyeballs and you give a fuck enough to be good at what you're doing, then all is forgiven. But Tyrus is not a good wrestler. He fucking, the NWA title has always gone on someone who was considered the best wrestler on the planet. Back when Flair, Dusty, Harley Race have it. And even in the darkest days of the NWA, it was always put on someone who was, a good wrestler, legitimate, a workhorse, Dan Severn, Kojima, Chris Candido. And then it went to the TNA era where you saw guys for the first time able to call themselves world champions who were always good workers, Christian, AJ Styles. And then even more dark days, it was held together by good feuds, Colt Cabana, Adam Pearce. And then about 5 years ago, Billy Corgan, yes, that Billy Corgan from Smashing Pumpkins, if you didn't know, owns the NWA. And the NWA started being really good again on YouTube with this show called 10 Pounds of Gold. This show hooked me and hooked thousands of others. Tim Storm, the high school or middle school principal who became world champion, Nick Aldis, took the title from him. And this was during a very interesting time to be a wrestling fan. It was when this indie wrestling scene that now has shaped into becoming AEW was forming, but it was kind of forming in New Japan a bit, around the country, in the UK, in Ring of Honor. People knew that something was happening, but they really didn't know what was happening yet. And Nick Aldis and the 10 Pounds of Gold kind of got swept up into that a little bit, leading up into All In with this feud with Cody Rhodes. Nick Aldis put the company on his back when he put the title around his waist. And then in 2019, the same week as Dynamite debuted, we had NWA Power. And this was just paid homage to the classic wrestling from the 80s on TBS Superstation. It even aired at 6:05 on YouTube. I remember this greatly. I did a show about it. It wasn't that good, I'll admit that. But I was hooked. There was tons of, shows solely based on this product that was, the pillar of this product was Nick Aldis. 2019, an amazing time to be a wrestling fan. Crazy to think about talking about 2019 like it's the past now, but it's 3 years ago. The pandemic wasn't good to the NWA. Dave Lagana, who was a big part in putting all of this together, got, Me Too'd. Marty Scurll, who was, someone who was being heavily pushed, got Me Too'd. And then during all that same time, AEW and WWE kind of raided the NWA talent. Ricky Starks, Thunder Rosa, Eddie Kingston, Eli Drake, or LA Knight now, all were on NWA Power and then all got contracts to be elsewhere. So it really wasn't looking good for the NWA while they were taking a hiatus because of the pandemic and everything. But when they came back, the show was kind of unwatchable. It was bad. I think that David Lagana was a big part in making that show good. Bigger than maybe we realized at the time. But they still had, their Ric Flair. They still had their John Cena, their Okada, if you will, in Nick Aldis, in my opinion. But they kind of, pushed him away a little bit. He wasn't in the world title picture as much. He was kind of doing his own thing. He had lost his faction. So you could kind of tell that they were doing something different with him. But then when he decided to walk away, you knew this ship was sinking. He got a little heat because he wanted to tell his, his subscribed fans on Instagram, but he did it wrong. So he ended up posting it to anyone who follows him. So it was just an open platform. He let everybody know, the cat out of the bag, which I think is funny. Nick Aldis isn't the youngest guy in the world anymore. He's definitely a veteran of the wrestling game, but new to Instagram, it seems, which cracks me up. It makes total sense. Someone, in their 30s would do something that he did. But now we see why he's a little pissed. Now we see why he's walking away. He mentioned that he wasn't happy with the product. And then now we see why, because he might have known something that we didn't know. That someone who can't even fucking work, just because he's on cable news, gets the fucking world title. It's fucking lame. It would be one thing if he could go. It'd be one thing if he had, a little bit of clout outside of wrestling, and then he was good in the ring. Like we saw with Logan Paul, like we've seen with Bad Bunny. I mean, shit, like we saw with Rick Ross backstage or whatever. But this guy is Giant Gonzalez level shitty. And they got 2 managers with him. They got 2 mouthpieces on him. And it still doesn't hide the fact that he can't go in the ring. 7 foot tall can't go. And Billy Corgan has the nerve to, when defending his decision to put the belt on Tyrus, comparing Tyrus to guys like Brock Lesnar and Bobby Lashley. Those 2 guys, legit athletes, legit fighting backgrounds. This is not the NWA. There is no point in having the rights to the NWA title if you were going to just shit on the lineage this bad by having something like this happen. I mean, I don't know really what you would do here. Just because you are playing off of the success from something like Fox News, something like just like cable news. Billy says that if you don't like this, then don't watch. Well, thanks for telling me in advance, buddy, because I'm not going to watch anymore. There's so much good wrestling out there in the world. Don't get me wrong, Colby Corino, he's a great wrestler. He's been killing it. Every time I do turn into NWA, seeing him on there is cool, but he's everywhere. He's wrestling in the hardcore promotions. He's all over the place. Camille, one of my favorite female wrestlers who's, a part of the NWA, she's on AAA too, so I don't really need to tune in to the NWA to see these guys, but I just kind of remember the new glory days, the 2017s, the 2019s of how good the NWA was. Not even the 80s. I remember, 4 or 5 years ago, what they had was something special with the 10 Pounds of Gold YouTube show and the beginning days of Power. Now, this is garbage. And then Tyrus, kind of, I don't know if he was defending himself, just made himself sound stupid here, saying that the people that on Twitter were quote-unquote woke trolls. Wrestling fans, for the most part, I don't really, some are woke, some are not, whatever. We're not going down that rabbit hole now, but, the whole thing about being trolls. Dude, if anyone is trolling, it's you and Billy tricking the people who are buying that trash-ass pay-per-view into thinking they were going to get something the caliber of an NWA title match. And then he does like the whole woke thing, like there was some kind of political agenda we all had into telling Tyrus he sucks. No, don't get me wrong, he's probably a better wrestler than me, because all I do is watch. I'll say that, go on the record saying that, since all I do is watch. But he is not as good as 99% of the wrestlers that I do watch. He's not as good as 90% of the wrestlers I have seen in the smallest wrestling shows across the great state of North Carolina. I'm not going to name the companies because I don't want to, drag these small companies into this. But I go to shows where it's legitimately guys' first or second time wrestling. And, they're not, the size of Tyrus. They didn't get into, wrestling through being big through the WWE and everything, but they can, in my opinion, can go as good or better than Tyrus, who is now the world champion. This is ridiculous. I guess I will report on what I hear about the NWA, because this is a fairly interesting thing going on with Nick Aldis leaving and everything like that, and the shambles of a promotion that this is now. But I don't think I'm going to watch Power anymore. There's so many good wrestling promotions. I love New Japan, as you guys know. I know Noah. I want to maybe dive into some DDT, some Stardom, some MLW. And of course, you guys know that I love AEW. As I get a little choked up, I might be getting a little choked up here thinking about the NWA, but I'm going in to talk about Rampage. Christian Cage comes out with Luchasaurus, Jungle Boy comes out, wants Luchasaurus in a cage, a steel cage match, not a Christian cage match. The storyline should be good. I mean, it looks like it's good. It's long-term storytelling, but I don't know if there's injuries that got in the way or what. But this whole feud kind of seems cold to me. Like, it's been happening. I guess you can go all the way back to the beginning of AEW with the teaming and the breaking up and everything. But it just seems a little cold for some reason. We will see how the match goes. But this Jungle Boy experiment might be a bust. He was always listed as a quote-unquote pillar in AEW. The other pillars, Sammy has his moments. Darby's has his moments. Of course, MJF damn sure has his moments. Jungle Boy is definitely the bottom of that list. Easily the Ringo Starr of the four pillars of AEW. I think it's fair to say that Britt Baker might bump Jungle Boy out and become a pillar at this point. You could say that there is like a second group of guys here that are kind of bumping Jungle Boy out from that pillar role, like Yuta, Garcia. Not sure who the other second generation pillars would be, but you get the point of what I'm saying here. This is a huge match for the legitimacy of Jungle Boy's career and how he is seen and viewed. Because it's kind of shit or get off the pot time for AEW. They've been pushing him for 3 years. They pushed him to this point, and if this match is a dud, kind of like how this feud feels like, I think that might be a wrap for your boy Jungle Boy. But I do think he's going to win this match, and I hope the best, because, I mean, I'm going to be watching it, so I hope I'm going to watch some good shit. And, I mean, Jungle Boy Jack Perry, as JR says, I think he's got a name to him. I think he's got a little cachet, and I think he can, bring in a little bit of the clout that he has away from wrestling, and he also, you can tell he cares about wrestling. There's also a Death Triangle promo on Rampage. The Elite is coming back, and I think they're getting their titles back that they never lost at Full Gear. That seems to be the way they're headed, and I think that match is going to lead to the breakup of Death Triangle. We also have a Lee Moriarty promo. Hook interrupts it. It looks like we're going to get that match at the pay-per-view as well. I hope they don't just feed Moriarty to Hook. If they actually have a bit of a match, I think this is a good pairing because Hook is over and Moriarty can go. Kind of like how we saw like Shelton Benjamin and Dominic Mysterio on Raw. You got a workhorse guy versus the guy who's actually over versus the guy that people are trying to focus on within the company. It's perfect here. House of Black video package. This was so sick. This promo that played over the top of this video package was good as well. I hope they don't fuck this shit up again because Malachi Black, Aleister Black, whatever you want to call him, came in super hot, kicking Arn Anderson's head off. But then he just slowly dwindled down to not really mattering too much, and I hope they kind of heat him back up again with these video packages here because I think this character is great, larger than life, and you need something like that in AEW, in my opinion. Hager trying to lure Claudio into the Jericho Appreciation Society, that was okay. There's 4 big matches on Rampage. We're going to rank every single match from worst to first. Number 4 out of 4, Nyla Rhodes versus Kayla Sparks. Haven't heard of Kayla Sparks. Didn't really get to see much of her because Nyla wins quick with a Jaded. Yep, that's right. She hits, Jade's big move. Not only does she steal Jade's title, but she steals her move. Jade's seen enough. She comes out to attack Nyla. Security pulls them apart. Number 3 out of 4, Brian Cage versus Dante Martin. A title eliminator tournament match. All Cage in the early going. Dante fights back, flies out of the ring, frog splash inside the ring, 1-2, Cage kicks out, lariat from Cage, 1-2, Dante kicks out. Huge full Nelson spin slam thing. I don't know what he did really here. From Cage, 1-2-3, he gets the victory. Number 2 out of 4, Lee Johnson versus Orange Cassidy. Johnson getting good here. Long time no see by Big Lee Johnson, Big Shotty Lee Johnson. Best friends and the factory all out there at ringside, kind of all hell breaking loose. This is really kind of like an odd, like 10-man tag singles match here. Camarado getting involved. QT Marshall pile drives Danhausen on the steps here. Lee Johnson with the upper hand. Cassidy fighting back. Cassidy diving on the factory. Back in the ring, cross body. Lee fights back. Beach break 1-2. Cassidy gets the win. Lee Johnson killed it in his first main event. That was kind of the main takeaway of this match. Orange Cassidy, I'm a fan. Took me a while, but I get excited when it comes out. The character's good, and then every match is good. Cole Carter gets destroyed. I guess they see a lot in him because they randomly put him in the Jay Lethal faction for 1 week, and now he's back in the factory, but they made a point to have him be the guy who gets hugged and gets his ass beat at the end instead of, someone else. I think Nick Camarado is good. I want to see more Nick Camarado and Big Shotty Lee Johnson. Maybe that could be a tag team. But the number one match on Rampage, Bandito versus Roosh. Roosh diving at Bandito before the bell and then choking him with a cord. Vintage Roosh there. Chops from both men. Bandito dives. Frog splash in the ring. 1-2. Roosh kicks out. Roosh with a wild elbow. Drop kick. 1-2. Bandito kicks out. Crowd getting into it. Press slam. 1-2. Roosh kicks out. Crowd on their feet here. John Silver runs out, keeping the storyline that was ruined by Sammy Guevara and Andrade's backstage fight going. Great match. Shitty ending. Silver distracts. Roll up. 1-2-3. Bandito gets the victory. Great Rampage, or not great Rampage, good Rampage. Hopefully this goes into a great Full Gear. We're going to be talking about that, breaking down every single match, giving my predictions of the matches that might get booked and the matches that are booked. I know that there's a go-home Rampage. I know that there's a go-home Dynamite, but I want to get these predictions out there, and then we're just going to do a big AEW show talking about Dynamite, talking about Rampage, talking about Full Gear, and I think there's a GCW show this weekend too. I might squeeze that in a little bit. I know there's a New Japan show. We're going to be talking about all that, all wrapped into one, but let's get into these predictions now. Some matches aren't officially official, like I said, but I think I'm going to, bring them up anyways. Hook versus Moriarty. I kind of already gave my opinion on this match. I think Hook should win, but hopefully they don't just bury Moriarty. The Trios title match, the Elite versus Death Triangle. The Elite win, but I hope Pac is the reason that the Elite win, and that means the Lucha Brothers turn on Pac, and we get some good matches between those three, and, then the Elite get the titles back that they never lost. Hopefully, maybe, I know I'm booking with my heart and not my head here, or a fantasy booking with my heart and not my head. But I hope House of Black come out after the Elite win. And then you kind of have the Elite and House of Black feud. I think that would be great matches. And you would have like the silliness of the Elite coming back as fan favorites, and the seriousness of the House of Black coming back as heels, but also fan favorites. I think that would be an interesting and fun dynamic to play off of. Wardlow versus Hobbs versus Joe. I think they should have done something where Joe turns on Wardlow at the pay-per-view, but nonetheless, here we are. I think that this makes Hobbs the fall guy. I don't know who's going to win. I don't want Wardlow to lose, so I guess I'm going Wardlow. And I think Joe has, other than the ROH Trios title, I think Joe has the title that matters the least in the AEW world, the ROH TV title. They need to do something where maybe the TV title and the TNT title become one, because there's way too many titles, and you kind of forget that Samoa Joe is a champion. They don't ever have him defend it. Now, those are the matches that aren't booked, but these are the matches that are definitely going to happen on the pay-per-view. Jarrett and Lethal versus Darby and Sting. Last time we saw Darby, he was like bleeding out after a guitar shot. So I do think that Sting and Darby are going to win this match, because they need their, the heels need their comeuppance. But Jarrett always finds a way to book himself going over. I mean, look at the first 5 years of TNA. Look at Jarrett going up against Effie in the Hammerstein Ballroom earlier this year in GCW. Even if it doesn't make sense, Jarrett will kind of win the match. So my heart says Darby and Sting, but my head says Jarrett and Lethal. We'll see what happens here. Saraya versus Britt Baker. I mean, Saraya's got to win her first match back, right? Right? Yeah, that's got to be what happens. Jungle Boy versus Luchasaurus. I already kind of went into what I think happens here. Jungle Boy has to win this match. I mean, he just does have to for the betterment of his career. The Eliminator Tournament, I said this before this tournament started. I hope and I think it's going to be Ethan Page versus Ricky Starks, and then I think MJF is going to win the world title, so it makes sense to have a member of the firm be a challenger for that world title. Ethan Page and Stokely Hathaway as a combination of people are probably the only thing that can go up against MJF on the mic right now. So if Ethan Page wins the Eliminator Tournament, it will just all make sense and all will be right in the world. Jade versus Nyla. I mean, Jade has to get that title back. I think this might be like Jade's John Cena slamming Big Show moment at Mania here, picking up Nyla and dropping her. So I'm going with Jade. Claudio versus Jericho versus Danielson versus Sammy Guevara. This is going to be the best match on the show, and it's not even going to be close. Jericho is going to steal one. They're going to tease the Sammy split from Jericho Appreciation Society. They're going to tease a split from Blackpool Combat Club. It's going to be amazing. I'm saying that this is going to steal the show, and that's my biggest prediction. That's the thing I'm going to put the most money on. That this is going to be the best match on the show. This 4-way. The Acclaimed versus Keith Lee and Swerve. I hope that they pull the trigger on this Swerve and Our Glory split. And that's the main takeaway from this match, and the Acclaimed win. Tony Storm versus Jamie Hayter. Tony wins because Britt Baker cheats. And then you get Jamie and Britt, and then you get in a feud. And then you get Tony and Saraya in a feud. Mox versus MJF, the world title match. MJF is going to win, like I said before. Maybe because Regal turns on Mox. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled is making you think that he's a face this whole time, even though he's actually a heel, obviously. And then you have Regal on his side because Regal turned his back to MJF, and MJF didn't do shit. So maybe that was, kind of foreshadowing something here. But then I don't really like the whole firm setup. So maybe MJF wins and has this big crowning achievement moment. Face reaction, the homegrown talent holding up the AEW championship. But then that would be good too, because then you would have, a string of opponents for MJF to go up against. You'd have him being able to take down Lee Moriarty, him taking down the Ass Boys, him taking down Ethan Page, him taking down W. Morrissey. So you have pretty much the first 3 or 4 months of his opponents lined up, because one thing that AEW hasn't done good is booking the title reigns. They book the chase good, but once their champion has the title, they don't really know what to do with him. Look at Adam Page and Thunder Rosa from earlier this year. They didn't really know what to do after they had the title. But setting up the firm as the main heel faction, and then MJF being the face, you then would have a good title run. I like the Regal scenario that I set up. I could see that happening. I like the MJF staying face setup. I can see that happening. Either way, I think MJF is going to leave Full Gear with the title, and this is their second opportunity to have a homegrown talent with their biggest title and do something with it. That's going to be a big, big thing for AEW to prove, because I said that the Hangman Page title run was very important, and outside the Danielson matches, I don't think they delivered with it. The Punk title reign really didn't do shit, obviously, because of all the injuries. The Mox interim title reign was really kind of weak. And then this Mox title reign, since All Out, has been kind of weak as well. So it's been a while. You got to go back a while till you really think about a strong AEW champion that everyone sees as the champion. You got to go back to Kenny Omega, and that was 1.5 years, 2 years ago. So I think MJF holding that title is super important for the company. I think it can kind of shake off the cobwebs that is this lingering backstage brawl with the Elite and CM Punk. It will get people for not thinking about that. MJF is the best talker in the business, and he can talk people into watching Dynamite. I believe that with all my heart. So I think MJF is going to hold this title. I think I'm marking out a little bit here, and that's okay, because it's wrestling, and that's what's fun to do with wrestling. Fly high. I'm out.